Serious, what is the scariest thing that you have ever encountered while home alone? I was house sitting for some family. They neglected to mention that their cat knows how to open doors. I learned this at 2 AM when the bedroom door flung open. We lived in a maisonette in London. We lived upstairs and a man was downstairs. He came banging at our door one day screaming that his flat was being flooded from our bathroom and to let him in. Well, I was 14 and my bro 13. Mum was out. He came in, went into the bathroom and did something. I don't know what. He was an adult and we trusted him. Well, mum called the council out and there had never been a leak. No watermarks or anything, so mum told us not to let him in again. Next time mum went out he came banging at the door again and we told him what mum said. P. And. Apeshti. Let MEFCKIIIINN. Let MEFCKIIIINN. All the while banging the FCK out of the door. God knows why he wanted in. Put a hidden camera in the bathroom. Had to fix it when it stopped working. I was taking a nap in my apartment under blankets in my bed when I hear the door open. Thinking it's my husband. I ignore it. But about 5 minutes later, I hear several female voices. I'm thinking I'm dreaming, so again, I ignore it. The voices get louder and suddenly my bedroom door opens. I freak out and bolt upright in bed. 3 women were in my apartment. 2 young. 1 older. I shriek. They shriek. They run out of my apartment. It turned out that the management company showed the wrong apartment available for rent that day. I got an apology and a bouquet of flowers. Was in the shower when I heard the door to my apartment being unlocked. Husband wasn't due back for several hours. Turns out it was the skeevy ass building manager snooping around people's apartments when he thought they were not home. Reported him to the company that owned the building but nothing ever came of it. Moved out shortly after. I was woken from a deep sleep by the most horrifying high-pitched howling noise. We lived deep in a wooded area. And I was familiar with sounds like foxes barking or even fisher cats screaming. But this was eerie and didn't sound like an animal. And it came from the other side of the house. But there was no sound of anything walking. You know how your mind isn't really logical when you first wake? I was convinced it was some terrible otherworldly creature. In the morning I checked some online recordings of sounds to figure it out. Turned out to be a tiny harmless screech owl. Little guy can make some demonic sounds though. I was maybe 11 or 12 and was home alone one winter day. The desktop computer I was using shared a wall with our unheated garage. The house was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. All of a sudden this boom erupted from the garage that shook the wall. It honestly sounded like a bomb went off. 20 minutes later, after hiding behind the couch and getting my heart rate down, I finally went to inspect. A 2-liter Sprite bottle had frozen and exploded off the shelf. Growing up we had large old mirror with a thick wood frame leaning against the wall in our hallway. I was doing some homework in the kitchen but got up to get something from the living room. The hallway is the connecting room between the two. So I passed through it. Picked up whatever I needed in the living room. Turned around and was on my way back. And that old mirror is broken on the floor. It is shattered. Pieces everywhere. As if it had exploded. It was completely fine when I passed it just seconds before. I didn't hear it break. I just kind of walked by it and headed out the kitchen door. Scared the shit out of me. Wood moves and twists with age and humidity. Glass doesn't. I guess is that there had been pressure and tension building for ages until the glass gave way. Yes. You probably already figured this out and know. I'm no fun at parties. Edit. Thanks for the awards. And thanks especially to those who said they would party with me. The first night alone at my new house. A dude tried scouting around my home looking for a way in. I flipped on all the lights and ran downstairs as loudly as I could, holding a plastic tomahawk in one hand. And my phone dialing 911 in the other. He never actually got inside the house. But it was terrifying, especially since it was literally my first night of living on my own. I was probably about 12. Newly allowed to be home alone for a couple hours over the summer. A man was walking through my fenced-in backyard. Walked right onto my deck to the back window. My dog was going nuts, barking with her hair standing up. I had no way out of the house or to the phone without this man seeing me in the window. So I'm hiding behind the couch waiting for him to break in when I see him exit my yard through the gate. I immediately called my mom almost in tears, and she said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, the gas meter guy was coming." Of course, the gas meter is right next to the window my brother and I always used to break into our own house when we forgot our keys. My dog was the only baddest that day. I was babysitting a family I was unfamiliar with. My parents knew them and suggested me when they needed a babysitter, and as I liked having money, I accepted. The kids go to bed and I kill time as one does before smartphones are a thing by reading, I think. Maybe doing homework. But that seems unlikely. Anyways, I start to hear speaking from another room. Not just speaking, but this low, almost demonic voice speaking to another one. I'm not a religious sort, but when you realize that no, you're not just hearing things, there's definitely a voice, it's more than a little creepy. Not knowing what was going on, I slowly crept up to the doorway of the sitting room. Then peered around the corner. FCKing Furbies. Talking to each other. At night. The dark. Furbies suck. I was at a friend's house, watching her cats, and suddenly someone stood on the balcony. Right when I walked down the hallway. I stopped dead and stood frozen for minutes. Heartbeat up in my throat. Turns out it was my reflection. Took me solid 10 minutes. Edit. Thanks for the award and great answers. A tree branch crashed through my window when I was home alone playing Xbox. I've always thought I would be prepared for like an intruder or something. But if that was a dude that just like did that SWAT rope swing thing through my window, he would have had enough time to walk over to me, grab a gun from my hand, load it, and shoot me before I figured what the FCK went on. I was like one of those goats that faint when you scream at them. I was babysitting my little sister. We were both watching television. All of a sudden I hear gunshots and bullets ricocheting from the window security bars. A moment later I hear moaning and screams coming from my front door. It was a drive-by shooting. 3 teenagers were shot up and managed to crawl to my door seeking help. As a 14-year-old at the time, it was something I was definitely not prepared to handle. Screams of F-king foxes, as in mating. No joke. Almost shat my pants the first time. A big, freshly shed rattlesnake skin on the floor in front of the TV where my kids were watching cartoons. I was home alone since my husband was away on deployment. One night as I was falling asleep, both my dog and I heard someone on the porch walking around. My dog flipped out and I decided to go downstairs. I grabbed my gun out of the safe and headed downstairs. About 2/3 of the way down I saw the man through the front door windows. We locked eyes and he said, "Let me in." I told him that he needed to leave. Again. "Let me in." I told him he needed to leave and that I was calling the cops. "Let me in." I told him I that had a gun. "So do I," and he lifted up a gun and aimed it at me. I fired my gun through the window but missed him. He ran off. The cops found him a few blocks from my house a little bit later. His gun ended up not being loaded. Still, most terrifying shit ever. I had a massive tub of Lego fell over while I was eating downstairs. I kid you not. It sounded like somebody went through the window. I was frozen on the spot thinking I was going to be killed or kidnapped or something. An hour and a bit passed and I thought they must have left. I slowly went around the house looking for evidence of a break-in. Then I saw the Lego all over the floor. I was 11 and home alone. I got out of the shower to discover my house had been broken into. Teen from down the street and his sister were in the living room ransacking the place. My dad kept one of those glass door gun cabinets at the end of the hall by the bedroom door. I took out the first gun I could grab and yelled at them. Dude turned around with a knife but dropped and ran when he saw the rifle. coward shoved his sister down as he bolted back out the door. The girl stayed on the ground screaming as I called the cops. They both got arrested over a pocket full of change the guy had shoved in his hoodie. This was in the 90s in Texas, and my mom was more pissed about the broken door and them touching her change jar than anything. Just moved into our brand new home. My husband goes out to pick up dinner. I'm just setting up our TV and all of a sudden a man comes down the flipping stairs. I scream at the top of my lungs and run for the front door. He screams at the same time. Thankfully the neighbors next door were outside. I squeak out that there is a strange man in my house. He comes out of my house and turns out he works for the development and had been fixing an upstairs bathroom. My husband forgot to tell me he was there. When I was like 7 or 8, I was taking a bath when I saw the guy walk out from the basement onto the back porch and out the backyard. Turns out we were being robbed when we got home. The guy hid in the basements for like an hour or two until he made his escape. He had stolen a bunch of hunting knives and stuff like that. I was watching TV alone like I do almost all the time, and a cat jumped up on my lap. I ain't got no f***ing cat. Okay? Our garter snakes had gotten out of their cage. We searched everywhere but couldn't find them. Finally my husband went to bed and I stayed up watching TV for a while. We had one of those gigantic old console TVs we had gotten when someone was throwing it out. Suddenly one of the dust-covered wires came slithering out from behind the TV. I had read Stephen King's Dolores Claiborne not too long before. And in that book the crazy old lady thinks the wires in her house are coming alive. I had a moment of holy crap. It's actually happening. Before I realized it was one of the snakes. That got my blood pumping. You better believe. Late at night I had both my cat and my girlfriend's dog start freaking out. I got up, grabbed my gun and flashlight and went through the house. Both the animals were growling and hissing at one of the vents, so I went over and shined my light into it and saw a cat. Turns out the previous tenants left their cats and there was a way for animals to get into the ventilation. Fun stuff. In the house alone one night and from my room I hear deep, guttural voices. Go in to check and no one is there. This happens a few more times that evening. After checking and finding nothing, again I stand perplexed and then I hear the voices again. From my stereo speakers. Turns out it was a nearby ham operator coming across. Somewhat. On my stereo speakers. Had whooping cough and after a coughing fit I was not able to breathe in again. Luckily I tried to force one more cough out of my empty lungs. It worked. Best breath I took in my life. 10/10 wood breath again. Got to experience heartburn for the first time while I was home alone. 100% thought I was going to die. Had my first experience with real heartburn while pregnant. Felt like someone had reached into my ribcage and was squeezing my heart and lungs. I couldn't draw a full breath and army crawled down the hall to my boyfriend's office space, begging him to call 911. Then I vomited on the floor while he is on the phone with my doctor. And everything was instantly better. Heartburn sucks. Someone trying to break open the window. Woke up because my dog was barking. Looked at the window and seen someone's head staring at me. When I was 12. A drunk neighbor tried winning back the affections of his ex by beating on her window with a plastic chair. Shouting "Come out here you stupid bitch" at around midnight. Then threatened to harm anyone who tried to stop him. I'm so glad chivalry is not dead. I am an ex-Mormon. I was in my 20s and living at home. My parents were out of town and I had the whole house dark. I hear the doorbell ring and see a guy a little younger than me that I barely knew from my old ward standing behind a complete stranger I had never met. The stranger introduced himself as a new leader in the ward and said he wanted to come in and talk about the church. I declined, said goodbye, and started to close the door. As I was closing the door he put his foot in the way and tried to force his way into the house while trying to tell me they were friends and that they just wanted to talk. I had to get more forceful with him to finally get him to leave. It was completely inappropriate for him to even be there, and even worse that he was trying to force his way into the house. I woke up one morning to a guy staring into my window right at me. I jumped up, of course, ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and went to confront the guy. I found out that there was going to be a house remodeled across the street and he had came to the wrong house. He apologized profusely and a co-worker of his yelled out, "Hey, over here, you idiot." So that turned from terror into comedy. I also have sensor lights in my hallway. I was sitting one time, felt a really cold sensation, so I turned around. The sensor lights were turning on one by one as if somebody was walking towards me. It was scary, but I don't really believe in ghosts and I didn't see anybody coming, so I just brushed it off as a malfunction. First time living alone. Took my dog in the backyard early morning, still completely dark out, before work. Heard a blood-curdling scream from next door and looked over to see the figure of someone jumping out the first floor window and proceed to start hopping the fence into my yard. Burglar was coming right at me. Luckily my dog was skittish as hell and was already on her way back to me cause of the scream. Slammed the door and locked it and proceeded to call 911. Somehow I called 911 before the guy who was burglarized because he was in shock. Spider running out of shorts. I just took off to get a shower while no one at home. One day my mom left the house and the TV was not working, so I went upstairs to play with my Legos and a car ran into the backyard fence and a wooden pole flew into the window that was right next to the couch we used to watch TV, and all the glass fell onto the couch and floor. I moved into a house at the beginning of last year and decided I wanted to get a security system. I got one that included cameras, door and window sensors, motion detectors, etc. Installing everything myself was pretty easy and straightforward. For the first week or so, if the alarm is tripped, no police are called and there's no response whatsoever. So you can get used to it. On my third night in the house at about 2:30-3:00 am, the alarm starts blaring and I remember jumping out of the bed in a panic. I couldn't believe my luck that I was really getting robbed and a lot of stuff was still in moving boxes for the guy. I turn off the alarm, grab my gun and clear the whole house. There wasn't a sign of entry anywhere to be seen. Turns out that one of the sensors I put up wasn't secured properly, so it fell off the door and assumed that the door was opened in the night. Felt real stupid after that. The apartment above mine caught fire. I thought the fire alarm was just a test until I heard something explode directly above me. I grabbed my cat and bolted down 11 flights of stairs to see flames bursting 10 feet out of the balcony above my unit. My mom had went to go run errands for about 30 minutes, but she couldn't bring me and I was around 8 at the time. It was afternoon and I decided to take a nap, and barely even 2 minutes into sleeping I feel someone fking grabbed my back with long nails. They didn't hurt, but I could still feel that they had long nails. Yes, this more than likely was sleep paralysis, but I could literally feel it. I jumped up and couldn't go back to sleep. I thought it was her messing with me, but I checked and her car wasn't in the driveway and she wasn't in any of the rooms. I told her and she got creeped out. I had trouble sleeping for 2 weeks after that. I was left home alone to watch the dogs while my parents did a carriage job. I was sitting near a window watching random videos on my phone. Being home alone at night always makes me uneasy, and the fact I was watching the occasional horror game did not help. I looked over at the window and saw 2 glowing eyes staring in at me. I literally screamed and almost fell out of my seat. It was my cat. She wanted to come inside. When I was younger, probably 14 years old, I was playing hide and seek with my little brother, about 4 years old. I was hiding and he was taking quite a while to find me. I was hiding in his room, which was right next to mine. He suddenly comes running into his room, where I'm hiding, and goes straight to where I was. I asked him, "How do you know where I was?"